All right. Great. Thank you, candidates. Everyone was super on time today. I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is live streaming on YouTube. So constituents are able to watch live as we record, and they will be able to watch anytime on YouTube following tonight. Hello and welcome to tonight's Magisterial District Judge Forum for Aspinwall, Sharpsburg, Blawnox, Indiana Township, O'Hara Township, and Fox Chapel. I'm Sarah Mayacher, branch manager of Sharpsburg Community Library, and I will be acting as the moderator this evening. Executive Director of Cooper-Siegel Community Library, our parent institution, Jill McConnell, will be serving as timekeeper and tech support. Sharpsburg Community Library is a branch of Cooper-Siegel Community Library, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Neither Jill nor I are residents or employees of any of the municipalities represented by this district, and this event was planned solely by me. Our candidates are logged into Zoom, which Jill will be monitoring throughout the evening. Residents are watching this forum as a live stream on YouTube. We have enabled live captioning, but please note there is room for error in the transcription service. This video will be available to watch on YouTube next week, and any resident without computer or internet access will be able to watch it at the library during regular operating hours. To get started, I'm just going to go over several guidelines. This is not a debate, but a forum. Candidates will not engage with one another. They will be asked a question by the moderator, me, and respond to that question only. Candidates will be muted when it is not their turn to speak. Candidates may also be muted if they go over time, if they broadly go off topic, if they use their time to verbally attack another candidate, or if they use incendiary language such as slurs or swearing. Candidates were sent a list of possible topics earlier this week and have no knowledge of any specific questions that I will be asking tonight. Candidates will each receive a 2-minute introduction time during which they should state their name and give a short speech about why they are running for their position and any related previous experience. For each question, candidates will receive 1 minute to respond. At the end, candidates will receive 1 minute 30 seconds to tell voters why they should vote for them. Now we will give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We'll be going in alphabetical order by last name. To start, I will introduce all of our candidates tonight. Jessica Lynch, Matthew Rudsky, Megan Sasinoski, David Turner, and Barry Wingard. We will be starting our introductions with Ms. Lynch. Please state your name as it will appear on the ballot and tell us why you're running for council. I'm sorry, reading my notes from previous time, why you are running for Magisterial District Judge and about any related previous experience you have.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Jessica Lynch, and for good luck, I have my Sharpsburg library spider plant with me right here today. So thank you again for the plant. I am running for Magisterial District Judge because I believe I can take my years of experience, 29 years of experience as an attorney, and bring to it and marry it with my community service that I've performed in this district for 27 years. I've lived in Aspinwall for 27 years, and I've been an active volunteer in many organizations. Many people know me from the service I've done with the Girl Scouts, with the church, with Vagabond Missions, lots of different groups in the community. And I've also been an attorney who is certified in conflict resolution. I've worked in landlord-tenant. I've handled protection from abuse victims. I've done pro bono custody conciliations and a lot of different matters. So that combination of community knowledge, community experience, along with legal knowledge and legal experience makes me a good candidate for the role. And that's why I want to serve, to be able to combine the two of them and give back to my community. Thank you very much.
Sarah.
Yes.
Sarah, this is Jill. I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know that I am not able to mute or unmute people at this point. I'm keeping time, but that's all I can do.
Oh, okay. I will keep an eye on the mute button. Thank you for the update there. I believe we left Megan, but I believe we have her back. So we're going to go to Mr. Rudsky for our next introduction, and then we'll move on. Let me unmute you. I think you're still muted, Matt. Okay, you're good.
There we go. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jill. Thank you to the library for organizing this. And again, to all of the candidates, it's always a pleasure to see everyone here. I am Matthew Rudsky. I am running for Magistrate. I am familiar to most people here in Sharpsburg. I am the mayor. Prior to that, I served on Borough Council. I started in 2011. I live in town with my wife, Bridget, and our daughter, Lydia. And I am running because I want to bring my training and experiences as an Aspinwall-based lawyer, where I've been practicing since 2011, and pardon me, since 2013. Prior to that, I clerked for a firm in Sharpsburg, and before that, I interned in the district attorney's office. My practice is a general practice. We do a little bit of everything at the office. I've represented numerous clients in magistrate courts, courts of common pleas, and administrative hearings. And with all of that, my collective experience as an elected official, being boots on the ground and finger on the pulse and learning what doesn't work and what works for our communities, I want to couple that with my training as a lawyer and what I've done locally here. I believe that magistrates are community-based judges. They are our neighbors, solving problems for neighbors. And I've been doing that for quite some time. I believe that justice should be restorative, fair, and accessible. I think we need to introduce diversionary programs to the courts. If people suffer from mental health issues or from addiction or kids at risk of truancy or delinquency. I did teach on a fellowship for a year, so I understand the correlation between academic success and being in the classroom. Also, in terms of fair and accessible justice, I will be a full-time magistrate. I think it's essential that judges and magistrates be in their courtroom or their chambers as much as possible. And that requires being attentive to the needs of constituents and also to the needs of the courtroom. So again, I humbly ask for everyone's support, and I look forward to the forum tonight.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Ms. Sasinoski. I know you kept going in and out. Are you here, Ms. Sasinoski? I think she may be experiencing some technical difficulties because I know she's logged in and out multiple times. So Ms. Sasinoski, we will come back to you. We will go ahead with Mr. Turner and come back to you. So I will go ahead and go to Mr. Turner. I believe you are unmuted. Go ahead. I cannot hear you, Mr. Turner. I don't see you as muted on my side, so it might be on your end. I apologize.
Let's try now. Does that work?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that. We have to love this virtual world, don't we? So my name is Dave Turner. I'm an O'Hara resident. I have 3 wonderful children with my wife, Melissa. They all go to Kerr. I have lived in this district all of my life. I grew up the first few years in O'Hara, then in Fox Chapel, and now back to O'Hara as an adult. Some things I want to share with you about my background. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 15 years. About 9 of those, 8 or 9 of those were spent in larger, medium-sized firms downtown, working on complex civil litigation. So I worked for clients as large as Fortune 500 companies and as small as individuals on business disputes and injury matters. I was very pleased and lucky to work with firms that allowed me to pursue pro bono free legal representation for various clients who needed free legal services, including protection from abuse victims and adults who were divorcing who needed conciliation arrangements for their children. After a long time in law and around the time I had children, I decided to pursue another calling and teach as well. So I maintain a small private practice, but I teach now at the Pittsburgh Public Schools and for several years in the Fox Chapel school system. I've taught in all the schools and taught largely at the high school. Some more about me. I grew up in Fox Chapel. For the first 15 years of my adult life, I volunteered with the Fox Chapel Volunteer Fire Department. And, you know, I think that's important because I hope you realize between that and my teaching service, I've really worked for.
I'm sorry, Mr. Turner.
Yes.
That's your 2 minutes.
That's my 2 minutes. Okay. Well,
Yes.
I'll tell you more about myself later. Thank you.
Yes, there'll be plenty of time for that. We still do not have Ms. Sasinoski, so we will go on forward with Mr. Wingard. So I will unmute you. You should be good.
Hey, I'd like to thank you first. I'm Barry Wingard. I would like to thank you for creating this forum. It's a very informative thing. And I'm sure our constituents look forward to hearing how each of the candidates are. What I would like to start with is, I look at this sort of as a job interview. And what each of us are trying to do is we're trying to ask the Fox Chapel voters who has the most qualifications for the relevant position as far as magistrate's concerned. Now, I have been a practicing attorney for 25 years, 20 of which I was a public defender. Now, during that time, I've been a defense attorney, I've been a prosecutor, and I've also been a war crimes investigator during my 30 years as a military officer, 15 years in the Army and 15 years in the Air Force. The 15 years in the Air Force, I was a judge advocate general, so I was a judge as well. Now, what I would like to talk about this evening is how we can expand and how we can make the district magistrate office much better than it currently is. We currently do have JRS and we do have mental health services that are available to go into courts. But unfortunately, we have a lot of magistrates that really don't understand how to use those resources. We also have Veterans Administration, VJOs, who can go into magisterial district judges and do that as well. I look forward to talking about those subjects as we go forward, but I think at the end of the day, there will be no doubt who has the most relevant qualifications for being magisterial district judge. That is me. I'm in the trenches every day, fighting it out in the courthouse downtown. I stand with the people who come in, no matter who they are, whoever they are that walk through the door. I'm there and I stand with them. And I'm the only person here, I suspect, who's done a whole body of work when it comes to motions, when it comes to suppressions, when it comes to trials of various sorts. I've done juvenile, I've done adult, I've done Phoenix, ARD. I've done every specialty court that there is. And that's why I would make the best magisterial district candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Sasinoski, I think we finally have you. I know we had some technical difficulties, but you'll have 2 minutes to give a brief introduction.
I'm so sorry about that.
With your name and just why you're running for this position. Go ahead.
Of course, thank you. My name is Megan Sasinoski. I'm a candidate for Magisterial District Judge in the District 05204. It's the entirety of the Fox Chapel Area School District. And I'm running simply to put my experience and my commitment to work for a community that I love. I currently work as an assistant district attorney here in Allegheny County. I worked there for a number of years. I've been promoted to a special unit that only handles domestic violence cases. There are only 5 of those attorneys at any one time in Allegheny County that handle those kinds of cases. They all begin at the magisterial district judge level. There are 46 in Allegheny County. I've been in front of almost every single one. And just unfortunately, the number of cases we do have in Allegheny County and the number of years I've been there, I've done thousands of those kinds of cases. I have a whole lot of actual practical experience when it comes to practicing in front of a magisterial district judge. I've seen what works, and I've seen, unfortunately, sometimes you see some things that don't work in terms of being on the ground there. And when I, in the course of my experience as well, I've reviewed search warrants as well. In the course of the time that I've been there, I've probably reviewed hundreds of those, even before they're submitted to a magisterial district judge for approval. And that's important for a number of reasons. It's important because that's a very large intrusion into somebody's home, car, cell phone, body, in terms of what level of probable cause you need to have in signing those kinds of warrants. I've reviewed them critically. And I've looked at, like I said, hundreds of them before they're even presented to a district judge for their approval. So I have a ton of experience. If they were to open the doors tomorrow and call me down, I'd be ready to go. I wouldn't have to learn on the job. There wouldn't be any learning curve for me. Over 90% of what a magisterial district judge handles are summary traffic violations, summary criminal violations, and criminal preliminary hearings. That's 90%. Those are the cases that I handle all day. Thousands of those in the course of my employment. I'm also committed that if this were my job, it would be my full-time job, but more importantly, it would be my only job. I don't have any other private clients, any private business, anything other type of employment that I'm tied up with, for lack of a better word.
I'm sorry, Ms. Sasinoski, that's your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, now that we have been introduced to all of our candidates, we will move into our question and answer section. For this section, each of you will have 1 minute to respond to the question. I realize that does not give us much time at all to get into specifics, so please be as clear as possible in that allotted 1 minute time frame. Just as a reminder, we ask your response focus on your plan, your opinion, your past action, not those of your fellow candidates. And I will note before the question, if it comes from the submission form that we hosted posted online, or if it is a question I drafted myself. Our first question is going to relate to cash bail. Sharpsburg is a community in the district that has a very high proportion of people under a lower socioeconomic status compared with the rest of the district. What is your stance on cash bail and why? And are there alternatives that you would consider? We will be going in alphabetical order, starting with the next after the introduction. So since we started introductions with Ms. Lynch, this question will start with Mr. Rudsky and will continue around. So Mr. Rudsky, your thoughts on cash bail and alternatives.
Thank you. I have been clear from the beginning, I don't believe in the use of cash bail. We know that cash bail disproportionately impacts people of color and poor people. In Sharpsburg, as you mentioned, a fifth of our residents live below the poverty line. A third of our residents don't have access to internet. A third of our residents don't have access to a car, and a third of them are on SNAP benefits. And no one should sit one night in jail simply because they cannot afford to pay to get out. One night in jail can cost someone their job, it can cost them their livelihood, it can cost them their housing. And if there's a custody issue, they can also lose their children. There are alternatives available. Magistrates can use electronic monitoring. If someone is a flight risk, you get the EM, you get the ankle bracelet. Also, there are alternatives. You can use non-monetary bond or unsecured bond, a promise to pay in the future, or other conditions can be set to guarantee someone's appearance in the future. We need to get away from the use of cash bail because, again, if people can afford to pay, they can get out of jail. If someone cannot afford to pay, they're going to sit in jail, and it can be very costly.
Mr. Rudsky, that's your 1 minute.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, your thoughts? Same question.
Sure. My position is simply no one should be incarcerated because they're poor because they can't afford a bail. That is wrong. The only things that a bail can secure is community safety. That's the one big thing that I would keep track of. That's an important thing. And the other important thing is that person, will they show up to the next listing? That's all it's supposed to do. And there are only certain things that you can consider in that equation. To do otherwise is unconstitutional. That's very clear. That's my position. Those are the things that I would consider. It wouldn't be that person's ability to pay a cash bail because they're poor. That's improper. They shouldn't be jailed even for one night pretrial for that. I agree. If there's an electronic monitoring alternative, that's something that should be explored, and that's something that they should have access to secure their next appearance.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, same question.
Well, unlike what I've heard from the last two candidates, I'm going to follow the judicial strictures that prevent attorneys from making promises about how they would adjudicate on cases. Now, that said, I do believe that cash bail, there may be times where it's permissible or it's usable and useful. Cash bail in and of itself isn't racist or classist. Cash bail, when used at amounts that are prohibitive for somebody to pay it, that's when it's wasteful and unhelpful. As Ms. Sasinoski said, the purpose of bail is to have you show up to court the next time, not to put you in jail. So I don't have any problems using cash bail in appropriate situations where the amounts are tailored to the expenses and income of somebody so that they can afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wingard, same question.
Thank you. As the only person here who has argued hundreds of motions for bond reductions and bonds being terminated and non-monetary bonds, I can tell you, I disagree with the first two people completely. Only somebody that hasn't done an extensive body of work would argue that cash bond is not necessary under certain circumstances. Rule 523 gives us the guidance to follow. And I agree with Mr. Turner. I'm not going to legislate from the bench. I'm not here to overthrow Rule 523. I want to be an arbitrator of what the rules say, not what I wish they would say. If the legislature decides to change that, that's up to them. But I can tell you, as a person who stood shoulder to shoulder with many, many people who suffered from cash bonds, at least if I get a cash bond, it gives me something that I can do the next morning to go argue that it should be reduced in the common pleas court. I've done it before. I'll do it again. I've spent my life arguing cash bond. I do not think that it should be used, but in the most extraordinary circumstances. But it is necessary, and it is called for, and it is the law, and we should apply.
Your minute is up.
Thank you. And last on this question, Ms. Lynch.
Thank you very much. And again, we have certainly, we've all heard each other's pitches at this point several times. So to repeat mine for the group and for the new people listening. I do not believe that people should go to jail simply because they're poor. I believe that there are alternatives within the bounds of the law and the rules that we can use. And equally important, I think people need access to additional resources. So whether it's pro bono attorneys at an earlier stage, whether it's legal aid attorneys or other means of getting representation to help them fight when there might be inappropriate use of cash bail, is something that I would like to see us support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Ms. Sasinoski and work its way around. And this is going to be on the topic of promoting community goodwill. This is a question from our form submission. As a resident of the district, how will you ensure impartiality if your neighbors find themselves before your bench? Ms. Sasinoski.
Sure. So I am a lifelong O'Hara resident. I'm actually living in the house I grew up in with my husband and my 2 young sons. I believe even the appearance of impropriety, whether that neighbor is your best friend or your worst enemy, even the appearance that they are someone who you've been seen with or anything like that, that's improper, and that's something that I as a district judge would recuse myself from if that appearance is there. People need more than ever to have faith in the judicial system, that we're a separate branch of government and that we should be above all of that. Show any kind of partiality one way or another is completely improper, and that's something that I would be consistent with if it were someone that I knew or a neighbor, like you're saying. I think it's proper that you recuse yourself from that kind of incident.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, same question.
I would have to disagree on that point. There are certainly times where you need to recuse yourself, where you have personal or financial direct relations or dealings with somebody, but we are a community position and we can't just punt a case every time we know somebody. So I would be, if there's a situation where somebody was a next door neighbor and I have a friendship with that person, I would certainly alert the other side to that possibility and give them the option to find another, or to provide them with another magistrate. But the basic tenet of being a judge is that you have to decide hard decisions, and you shouldn't be able just to hide behind it because you bumped into somebody down at the grocery store. So only serious conflicts require recusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wingard, same question.
Well, I find myself agreeing with Mr. Turner yet again. I think that you do have an obligation to disclose if you believe that there is a conflict. The rules of professional conduct dictate what you can and can't do. I think you should disclose that, and I think that you should tell the parties. And if the parties are willing to waive that, then that's for them to decide, not me as the district magistrate. I know a lot of people. But there's another bigger important thing here. I haven't sought any endorsements. I don't want one team to favor me over the other team because I want to do justice for both teams. I have not sought endorsements. I haven't asked for endorsements. Quick story. I have 2 people when we're getting petitions signed, each live next to the other. One has a Trump sign, one has a Biden sign. They're both veterans. I say to them, hey, you people need to come together. It's about us. We have more in common with one another than we have differences. It's about unifying the community. It's not about keeping things divided and apart. And that's what endorsements mean to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch.
Thank you. I think impartiality is shown by one's reputation and track record. And certainly in my experience, I've served as a referee. I haven't taken a side. I haven't been a prosecutor. I haven't been a public defender. So the neutrality in which I've conducted my practice as an arbitrator and a mediator, and quite frankly, they're called neutrals, will show that I have a record of impartiality. The other piece of it is just your judgment, what you've shown over time in the community. Are you able to do the right thing? Are you able to separate maybe the examples of when you have to recuse yourself, when you have to provide notice? And sometimes you just have to make a hard decision, even though it is somebody you know from the Giant Eagle. So again, reputation as well as a course of conduct are what I believe will show that there is impartiality in my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, last on this question.
Thank you. As judges are supposed to be impartial. They should be impartial. And we are calling balls and strikes When it comes to the issue of recusal, there are obvious situations such as a family member or a colleague where you should most definitely recuse. As has been pointed out, we are community-based judges. We are going to know a lot of people. I've been involved in local government since 2011, and I serve on 4 different nonprofit boards. So I've made a lot of contacts in the community. So in those situations, as has been pointed out by prior candidates, you should notify the parties of the potential conflict and ask the parties if they are comfortable or not with proceeding with you as the magistrate. And if they are not comfortable proceeding that way, then the matter can be, you can recuse yourself from that matter and it can be handed off to another magistrate in a neighboring community.
Thank you. Our next question will be focusing on affordability and the eviction crisis. And this will be starting with Mr. Turner. With the rent moratorium reaching an end, evictions are set to resume. What will you do to help residents facing eviction?
Sure. Well, there's a limited amount that that magistrates can do in one sense, because we are forced and required to follow the law first and foremost. So if moratoriums fall aside and eviction actions are filed, the ultimate outcome may in fact be signing an eviction order, which is not a pleasant idea and not something I'm running here to do. But what I would like to be able to do is to
I believe you froze, Mr. Turner. Are you still here? Jill, what was the time on Mr. Turner? We can give him more time later.
He had 25 seconds. Oh, back, I think.
Are you back, Mr. Turner? You have 25 seconds remaining if you are unfrozen.
I'm sorry, I was finished with my statement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about the technical issue there. Mr. Wingard, same question.
Thank you. As a magistrate, I understand that homelessness serves nobody's purpose. In fact, we should try to keep people from being evicted where possible. The federal government gave a program to Pennsylvania of over $550 million. I think we should work to try to keep people in homes. But then again, I don't think we should forget the fact that there are many people that have apartment building complexes that carry second and third mortgages as investment properties. So I think what we need to do is the magisterial district. We need to bring the people in. We need to try to get the information out. We need to try to reconcile what we can do with the respective parties as far as keeping them there. There are programs for both the landlord and the tenant. And it's my job as the magistrate to make sure that information is getting out, inviting neighborhood legal services into my office, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch, same question.
Thanks very much. So this is what I do right now. I serve as an arbitrator on the housing court for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. And it is unfortunate that even with the moratorium, we still see eviction cases. And landlords call eviction cases lose-lose. They lose the time, they lose money in pursuing cases, they don't actually still get paid rent. And of course, tenants see them as a terrible situation to be in. So with the eviction crisis, I've given this a lot of thought. What I would ensure that all tenants do is, are they aware of the just mediation Pittsburgh option to resolve their crisis? Oftentimes, landlords and tenants don't communicate effectively. So I would ensure that there's a means available for them to do so. I would also ensure that tenants apply for the various programs. We've seen a number of cases where the tenants who've come before us have not actually pursued the benefits and resources that are out there publicly available to assist them with their rent. And then I'd also look for ways that we can navigate the situation through status conferences.
That's your time, Ms. Lynch.
Thanks very much. I'm obviously passionate on this one. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, same question.
Thank you. Yes. Housing insecurity is a big problem in the country right now with the eviction moratorium, which we know has been lifted. So we're going to see numerous eviction actions being taken over the course of the next few months unless there's a stay issued. But as Jess pointed out, there are services that landlords and tenants can be directed to, such as Just Mediation Pittsburgh. And it is a mediation. If a landlord were to come in, they can be recommended to use Just Mediation Pittsburgh. It's a nonprofit organization with a mediator that doesn't cost the parties anything. And it allows an opportunity for the landlord and the tenant to sit down and to try to work out the situation without using the legal system, which saves everybody time and money, and it's good for judicial economy. If that doesn't work, the tenant should also be advised of programs such as neighborhood legal services, where they could acquire representation for free to help them through the system, through the magistrate's office, and if it's appealed downtown to the Board of Arbitrators.
Thank you. And last on this question, Ms. Sasinoski.
Sure, I think it's important when it's possible for all the parties to mediate the situation as much as possible. It eliminates the need for attorneys in some instances. It speeds things along. It just helps everybody along in the process. In addition, without getting repetitive to what a number of other candidates have said, I think the law schools are another good resource. They have a lot of clinics, especially I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I'm familiar with some of theirs where they would send, obviously under supervision, but they would send certified legal interns to assist in these kinds of matters. Even that's if at the mediation level. I've been a renter. My husband owns rental property. I'm sensitive to all sides. I agree with Ms. Lynch when she categorizes it as a lose-lose. There are oftentimes for all the parties, it's very difficult to come to some kind of conclusion unless you have a district judge who's willing and able to meet with all the parties, because that's their sole focus. Or the parties in front of them, and helping both sides through what can be a very difficult issue and what obviously will be in the coming months.
Thank you. Moving on to accessibility. This question will start with Mr. Wingard, and it comes from the form submission. What accommodations will you make to ensure your court can best serve residents? Will this include outreach, evening hours, etc.?
As I've said, and everybody agrees, we believe that magisterial district judges should work full time. And in fact, what I propose to do is to have a weekend, half a day on the weekends and a weeknight session. In addition to that, what I would like to do is I'd like to make my court more accessible to mental health clients and to veterans and to drug court. Currently, there are programs in place through JRS, which is Justice Related Services, and the VJO, which is Veterans Administration. What we would do is when someone is arrested and brought before us, we would see that they have a diagnosis. If they had a diagnosis, we would then begin to develop a baseline plan. And if the person were agreeable to me, for me to handle the case there, I would postpone the case for 3, 6, 9 months. In that case, we would review it every week. And if the person gets back on track, instead of reviewing it weekly, we would make it every other week until the person successfully completed the program. And that way we would get to the core issue of what the problem is. People don't need to be in the ACJ for 23 hours a day and 1 hour of recreation time. We can work those issues.
That's your time, Mr. Wingard.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch, same question.
Thank you. So there's a reason this is called the minor judiciary. It's because we are at the bottom rung of the court system in the community, and the minor judiciary reports up to the Court of Common Pleas and further up through the chain of the Pennsylvania court system. I am absolutely open to evaluating what works and what doesn't work right now. I would like to talk with the staff, the bar, the attorneys who have practiced before there, the police, the schools, the community. In fact, I'd like to look into having a resident or citizen academy where people get to know the court more and get to know the processes, their rights, their obligations, and their consequences. I think there's a lot that we can do to improve it, whether it's virtual hours, whether it's weekend hours, whether it's early morning hours, whether it's monthly. There's a lot of things out there, but first we need to assess what it is that in this day and age in 2021 is going to be useful for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, same question.
Thank you. As just pointed out, we are the gatekeepers. Magistrates are the gatekeepers of the criminal justice system and the justice system in Pennsylvania. So it's imperative that they work full time. And with that full time, magistrates, I've committed to asking for permission to do an evening court. And this would be worthwhile for working folks, people who don't want to burn a sick day or lose a day's wages to come to court for a non-traffic issue or a traffic issue or a misdemeanor or a felony. Also for students, we don't want to take them out of the classroom. So we can use the evening court after the high school day ends, the middle school day ends, the elementary school day ends. If there's a truancy issue or a delinquency issue, they can come after the school day. We want to keep them in the classroom as much as possible. I will also commit to staggering rather than stacking cases. Staggering is important. Right now, most magistrates schedule everything at the same time, and that's very inefficient for the people who are appearing, whether it be a victim or someone accused of a crime, or police officer or attorneys might end up sitting in the courtroom for 3 hours.
That's your time,
until
Mr. Rudsky.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, same question.
Sure. Something that we've all gotten used to, and that I think is one of the biggest tools that we have in our arsenal to keep cases moving, is the use of video technology. It sounds silly, we're all talking on it right now, but that's a huge thing. I've done preliminary hearings, I've done non-jury trials, I've done motions all on video technology. So to require the parties to physically come in anymore is ideally something of the past. This way, with this new technology, this is something we can do to encourage cases, not only the mediation that we've been talking about in some landlord-tenant issues, but in terms of cases that need to be reviewed for somebody who is seeking mental health, substance abuse treatment, and coming back to deal with their case and coming back to check their progress in a few days. The use of video technology would help tremendously. It would be able to move these things along. And another thing that not everybody, I don't know that everybody has mentioned, would be expediting particular cases for people who are incarcerated awaiting detainers. That's a huge backlog of cases.
Your time is up, Ms. Sasinoski.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last on this question, Mr. Turner.
Yes, I think we have come to a consensus on many of these issues. The one thing I would say is where I might differ is, one, I would like to have court in the actual school building for school students facing truancy or school citations. I think that's even a quicker and more certain way to in the courtroom without having them lose any time in class, which is extremely important to someone like me as a teacher. Additionally, I am all for the idea of using video technology, but I disagree about using it in the context of certain hearings and in particular bench trials. We have trials in person for a reason. Judges are to read witnesses and read defendants to try to learn from them how credible they are. So I think that's important for both the judge and the defendant to have certain hearings in person.
Thank you. For our next question, Mr. Wingard actually touched on this a little bit. We'll be talking a little bit about how we judiciate mental health and drug addiction. And this question will be starting with Ms. Lynch. It's from our form submission. How will you help residents with mental health or addiction issues who find themselves in your court?
I will treat them with great empathy and understanding. So in the legal aid world, where I've been a pro bono attorney for the 29 years, I've always handled cases. I've certainly have had cases with individuals who have mental issues, but I've also served 2 years in legal aid. And in that role, I worked with a number of mental health groups and substance abuse treatment centers. And the main goal was to provide wraparound services. So oftentimes a person doesn't have just one problem. They have issues, perhaps in the legal system, maybe it's a drug charge, but then they also have issues with their job, perhaps with homelessness, perhaps with domestic violence, all of these issues. And what I found is partnering with people who are experts, whether it's through the mental health court that we have or through the social worker services that Allegheny County is now providing for magisterial district courts, or again, partnering in the community with the great providers that we have right here in our area to provide these extra services. I call it the wraparound services issue. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, some questions.
Thank you. Yes, it is important to recognize that addiction is a disease. It's a terrible disease. It's sweeping the country. It's only gotten worse since the pandemic started. And addiction doesn't care about your socioeconomic status or your creed or your race. So we need to address these situations in the magistrate courts through the use of diversionary programs, which everyone here has talked about at length. We can take people if they are charged with low-level offenses, nonviolent offenses, drug offenses, and divert them out of the justice system, get them the tools and resources they need to get rehabilitation and counseling. I'm proud to say that in Sharpsburg, our police department is taking part in the law enforcement assisted diversion program. And we are doing exactly that. If our officers arrest someone for a drug offense, charges are filed, but then the matter can be continued for 60 or 90 days. A course of rehabilitation is given to the individual. If they complete that, and if they don't have any other issues in the interim, the charges can either be dismissed or they can be withdrawn completely so that we can get these.
Your minute is up, Mr. Rudsky.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, same question.
Well, for somebody who's suffering from a mental health or substance abuse issue, the biggest enemy when these cases are first filed is time. As time marches on, other issues can develop. This person could be in the throes of some sort of one particular problem, one particular bad time in their life. And for someone who is waiting for their case to be heard, is waiting to get linked up to justice-related services that people have alluded to, JRS, even just a few days in between their arrest and when they're charged can be forever, and it can have terrible consequences. I've committed, and I have the relationships necessary. I've worked in the system for quite a while, linking that person up with justice-related services at their arraignment when they're first seen in front of a magistrate. That's the earliest time that there's the justice process begins. That's when they need to have those services. That's when the inception of the case begins. Waiting any longer.
Your time is up, Ms. Sasinoski.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, same question.
So as a teacher at a school district with a really high at-risk populations, I've dealt with many students with addiction and mental health problems, and it is difficult and challenging. It can feel like you're being persecuted at the time when somebody with one of those problems is exhibiting behaviors that aren't their normal selves. But I can just tell you that I've had somebody walk into my room with a chair over their head coming towards another student. You want to be frustrated, but you have to come back the next day and even later the day and say something else is going on here. So the identification quickly, the reference to services to identify behavioral health and behavioral health and addiction services quickly is essential. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wingard, last on this question.
Thank you. Today, I did 69 cases in mental health court. I currently represent every single client in Allegheny County in mental health court, and I represent over 95% of the veterans in Veterans Court. During my career, I've also represented clients in ARD court, the juvenile court system, the adult court system, pretrial services. I've done every single magistrate in Allegheny County. And what I want to tell you is if you're within the sound of my voice, if you have a mental health issue, it's nothing to be ashamed of. I have high blood pressure. I take a pill for that. We can figure this out together. When I win for magistrate, I will have the respective professional in my courtroom. We will get a baseline diagnosis and we will get you a program. We will figure this out. And if we can't figure that out in my courtroom, we will have it flagged correctly for mental health down in the Common Pleas Court, where I currently serve as the public defender for all mental health court clients and veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the topic of restorative justice. This question will start with Mr. Rudsky and work its way around to all candidates. What does restorative justice mean to you, and how will you utilize it in your court?
Thank you. I think this is a natural segue from the topic that we just had for individuals who do suffer from mental health issues or from addiction, or kids who are at risk of truancy or delinquency. We need to use the tools available to us as magistrates and in the court system to divert these individuals out of the criminal justice system. We know that the purpose of incarceration, it serves many purposes. One is a deterrent, one is a punishment, but also one to rehabilitate people. And we know that that system is failing. And magistrates do have the tools available to them to divert people early on in the system. We are the gatekeepers, we're at the ground level to get individuals the help and tools they need to get their lives back on track and not get them into the system where the system, it costs the taxpayers money, and it also can cost that person their livelihood, their home, their families. We need to get them the tools they need to get back on track.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, same question.
Sure. To me, the most important thing about restorative justice is it restores that one person back to where they once were before they had issues. And then it also restores community in terms of safety, in terms of security, and how everybody functions within that society. I've had cases where there have been issues, not only, like I said, I've represented mostly victims in terms of in situations of domestic violence. They're often women and children. Those people are as affected. They're in the same kind of community, the same life situation as those people charged with those crimes. It's important to be able to put yourself in the shoes of both parties and really call the situation as you see it and treat everybody fairly.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, same question.
This is an area that I'm very excited about. You know, I agree with everybody else about the diversionary programs and the need to get people into them. It's baked into our legal system and for good reason. But what I'm proposing is for the people who come through and do have bad outcomes in courts, be they defendants or victims, to personally work with them after their case is no longer pending. This is something that I have done with students because with students who, you know, sometimes come back from the criminal justice system or come back from rehab, you're with them for the long haul. And I'm with my students for the long haul. I'd like to be with our community members for the long haul and problem solve with them after they've had their course in court ended. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wingard, same question.
As we talked about before, I have extensive experience in all the diversionary treatment courts. I've worked in mental health court, I've worked in veterans court, I've worked in ARD, which is advanced accelerated rehabilitative disposition. I've worked in Phoenix court, I've worked in domestic violence court. There's no court that I haven't worked in. What I think does work is trying to handle the situation at the lowest level possible. I don't think that there's anything wrong with cases that can be kept at the magistrate staying at the magistrate. Now, if that requires that we get a service plan together and that you agree that I can monitor your service plan and that at the end of 3 or 6 or 9 months, we will dismiss your case if you do everything that you're supposed to do. You take the medications you're supposed to take, you get back on track, you get a job, you reconnect, you write, you do your community service, you do everything that you're supposed to do that the experts tell us is required. I will then terminate your case. It will never go downtown. So therefore, you don't have to worry about getting it expunged. It will never have a CC number. It will only have a Magisterial District Judge, MJ number.
That's your time, Mr. Wingard.
Thank you. And last on this question, Ms. Lynch.
Thank you. So restorative justice to me is about perspective. And here the perspective for our magisterial district court is that there are a small number of criminal cases that come through here. The vast number of our residents will deal with this court in terms of traffic cases, summary offense cases, and landlord-tenant issues, perhaps neighbor disputes. But for people who are in the criminal justice system, this is the most important question. And I think the perspective that I would look at it from is, besides being open-minded and empathetic, I would certainly take advantage of any diversionary services that are out there. I would also look at the victim services and how does the victim get to a point where they see it as restorative justice. I've done a lot of work with the Criminal Justice Advisory Board as well as the Foundation of Hope, which helps deal with people who have been incarcerated and their future for when they become returning citizens and are released from jail. Those are true restorative justice programs where we help to break this cycle of recidivism. And my awareness in working with those groups would inform me as to how that we can really achieve restorative
Your minute is up, Ms. Lynch.
for all the parties. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll actually be talking about recidivism in this next question, and we'll start with Ms. Sasinoski and work our way around. What measures will you take for residents to prevent recidivism, which is the tendency to reoffend?
Sure. Unfortunately, I'm very familiar with what recidivism is. That is something that you see quite frequently, unfortunately, in the field that I practice in, most domestic violence. People tend to reoffend, and for every single instance of a simple assault, that's the charge that we see most frequently, unless it's elevated to an aggravated assault. For simple assaults, you could have any number of those cases. You could have 5, 10, 15 of those. They're always graded as a misdemeanor of the second degree. They're not punishable by anything further. Whereas a retail theft, your third retail theft bumps it up to a felony, whether you're stealing a car, whether you're stealing a candy bar. So those numbers are something that really impact people. Those are who are charged and the victims as well. In terms of recidivism, you need somebody who's solely focused on this particular position, who's willing to work with both parties when it's consistent with community safety. The victims who are impacted and those charged with a crime who are impacted, obviously. You have to be willing to hear both sides, and you have to be willing to work with them in terms of whether they reappear after they've gotten, whether it's a
Your
substance.
time is up, Ms. Sasinoski.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, same question.
So, we've all committed to being full-time magistrates, and the question I'm concerned with is, what are we going to be doing with our time? The extra time that maybe other lawyers would be out practicing law when they're not hearing cases as magistrates. Well, I've told you what I'll be doing, and it will really be working to prevent recidivism and preventing people from going to court in the first time. I've worked with a ton of kids who have had trauma, and when they have trauma, which is, in the mental health arena, that leads to unpredictable behavior. And what I've learned is if you have one interaction with a kid like that, and it's only punitive, they see you as part of the problem. So I want to work with people over time, many contacts, following up with them, trying to problem solve so that they understand that we're actually trying to help them rather than hurt them. And I've seen behaviors change when they buy into that system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wingard, same question.
Thank you. When you talk about recidivism is a very serious thing. I believe that you have to have early intervention. I believe that you have to have intervention at the local level. You have to have someone who understands the community. In mental health court, where I currently work in the common pleas court, we don't get the case downtown for 4 to 6 months. After the formal arraignment and after the pretrial conference, oftentimes, we don't even start evaluating the cases. Once we do get the cases, the recidivism rate is 31% for mental health court and about 18% for veterans court. Early intervention is key. Supervision is key. Letting people get back on their medications is key. I know the people, I know the places, I know the funding sources, I know the programs. I know what we need, and I'm the person that can bring that to Fox Chapel Area School District. I want to be a model court, not just another court. And that's what I'm going to do. Mental health court, veterans court, and drug court reviews. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch, same question.
Thank you. So recidivism is so high because we have a system, and we have a system that just repeats the same problems over and over again. The prosecutor brings the charges, they're defended, it goes over, the person goes to jail, they come back out, etc. They're in the system. So what we need to do is get to the heart of the matter. And I am a certified conflict resolution specialist. I'm not the smartest, I am not the greatest, but I'm someone who would work hard to get to the heart of the matter and understand what the issues are that keep having the same problem. So I would bring in community resources. I would ensure that we have access to legal representation, because when there's access to legal representation, that does help inform a person and they have a better likelihood of success. There's a group called Homeboy Industries, and what they found is recidivism is also about a lack of hope. So in working with the community and working with providing resources, my goal would be to bring hope so that people don't continue to be in the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, last on this question.
Thank you. As has been pointed out, it's about early diversion. It's about stopping that pipeline to prison, giving people the tools and resources they need to get back on track. And it's about following up, as David points out, if it's an issue with students or with kids, and they come in for a delinquency issue, you can continue a matter for 60 or 90 days. And even after the issue is adjudicated, you can continue to follow up with that student, make sure that they're staying on track. I've done a lot of work in Sharpsburg with our youth. I'm on the Youth Empowerment Project with All of Us Care. And it's so important just to keep people accountable and for people to know that you're listening and for people to know that you're working with them. We need to be compassionate, but we also need to be firm. And again, that all goes back to getting early intervention and stopping issues before they happen. And if something does happen, you continue to work with that individual to prevent them from reoffending.
Thank you. Right. This question will start with Mr. Turner and work its way around. It is from the form submission, and it has to do with equity, diversity, and inclusion. the justice system disproportionately affects Black and Brown residents, as well as residents of lower socioeconomic backgrounds. How will you ensure that your court is equitable?
Well, and I just want to make one correction since Mr. Rudzki brought it up. When I was talking before about following up with children, I meant adults as well. So how do we deal with bias issues in the court? All we can control is our court. I've learned through trainings that I've gone through. I've learned through experience working in communities, school communities with 84% African American and mixed race communities, that the best things that you can do is to be your authentic self, to recognize that you come from your own personal experiences and that you can be very wrong. So listening, looking for the humanity in everybody that comes before you, which is what I naturally do as a teacher, but I would do as a judge as well. Forgetting about backgrounds and focusing on what's going on in the court that's brought this individual or these individuals there. That's the best I can offer for this issue.
Your minute is up, Mr. Turner.
Thank you. Mr. Wingard, same question.
Thank you. The best way to encourage diversity is to actually get in the system and actually do cases in the criminal court system. I earlier heard people talking about maybe we should have some more pro bono, maybe you should get your feet wet doing pro bono kinds of things in the criminal court system. I think that that's what would be required to be a judge. You would have to understand the rules of criminal procedure. You'd have to understand the law. You'd have to understand the rules. You'd have to understand the differences between the different charges. To suggest that, we can kind of encourage things just the way it is. As a public defender, I don't have a choice who walks through my door. I represent them irrespective. It's the way I live. It's the way I've always viewed things. It's not a black-white issue. It's an issue of fairness. It's an issue of justice. It's a matter of doing what needs to be done. And yeah, I know the public defender's office has made a real effort to try to have more diversity. And I think the district attorney's office has as well. I welcome that as a practitioner who stood next to the people who are being charged by the government and the district attorneys. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch, same question.
So equity and diversity and inequality are all about perspective, in my view. It's about improving your understanding by looking around and seeing what you see, but also appreciating that there's things that you don't see and that you have implicit bias and may not actually understand the reality of what someone's lived situation is. So my goal would be to ensure education, my own personal education. I've worked in the diversity arena for many, many years. I understand the differences between equality and equity, but I also know that I have a lot to learn still, and we learn every day as people share their experience. So I would continue to learn, continue to exercise my judgment with an open mind and with compassion and empathy, and certainly create an environment in the courtroom where there's a diverse set of voices that are being heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, same question.
Yes, thank you. Diversity is important. Recognizing that we all have implicit biases is important, and also recognizing that there are systemic inequities in our system. We live in Allegheny County, which is 13% Black, but 56% of the arrests in Allegheny County are Black people, and 60% of the individuals incarcerated in Allegheny County Jail are Black. And again, yet 13% of Allegheny County's Black population is Black. So I have taken an implicit bias course through a continuing legal education program. And I would request that my staff also take this course to recognize that these implicit biases are exactly that. They're built in. Our brain does create shortcuts for us to recognize one thing or another because there's just too much going on in our head, and it's a natural process. And we get over that through education, through informing ourselves, and through applying it realistically within our communities. And whether that's advising individuals who are unrepresented that they have the right to use the public defender's office or neighborhood legal services, there are ways, through equitable ways, that we can even the playing field.
Your minute is up, Mr. Rudsky.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, same question.
Thank you. As an assistant district attorney, my only job has always been to seek justice. It's not to advance my statistics. It's not to get a conviction at all costs. It is to seek justice, whatever that justice, whatever form that takes, whether that's zealously pursuing a case as it's charged, whether that means withdrawing a case, whether that means working the case out, bringing the parties back in 30, 60, 90 days after treatment, after restitution has been paid. At that level, at the magisterial district judge level, you have the ability to do that. And that's something that I'm very familiar with. That's something that I have practiced. I've actually taken those steps. I'm not just talking about it. Those are things I'm doing every single day, and they're things I've been doing for years. I haven't just been talking about these things. In terms of the judiciary itself, when we step back and take a look at it, of the magisterial district judges we have, there are 46, only 9 are women. That's less than 20%, which is abysmal in this day and age. It should represent the community. So I'm someone who's recognized that, and when we travel to all the different magisterial district judges' offices, as I'd encourage everyone to do.
That's your Ms.
Really
Sasinoski.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, a little lighter question here. This is also from the farm submission. What are the qualities that you find are the most important to be a successful judge? And we'll start this with Mr. Wingard.
As I said before, and I'll say again, it's experience. It's not a matter of what you say that you're going to do in the future. It's not a matter of some position paper or seminar you attended. It's a matter of what you've done. It's a matter of bringing that experience. It's a matter of having broad experience through all the different courts. It's about being a prosecutor. It's about being a district attorney. It's about being a public defender. It's about being a war crimes investigator. It's a variety of different things. It's about doing ARD court and mental health court and veterans court and juvenile court for years. It's about doing pretrial screening. It's about doing all the things that are necessary, adult trial. That's what makes a good magistrate. Before you're asked to be put in a position of being the arbitrator and the judgment finder, you should know at least what that requires. And I think experience is the #1 qualification. And I think I have the most experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynch, same question.
Thank you. Since I have the experience as an arbitrator and a decision maker already, the most important quality I see is temperament. What is the person who is sitting on the bench going to be like when they're dealing with the parties before them, whether they're attorneys or self-represented litigants? Are they going to be respectful? Are they going to be understanding? Are they going to be empathetic? Or are they going to be harsh and have already made up their mind before the people even come into the courtroom? Are they going to conduct themselves in an ethical and professional manner? All that, in my mind, comes under the term temperament. And do they have the ability to act as a judge should act for our school district? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, same question.
Thank you. I will second what Jessica just said, but also I think judges should be accessible and diligent and fair and impartial. And I've strived to be that way, not only as an elected official, but also as an attorney. You also must bring experience, as has been pointed out. I am a general practice attorney. I've practiced in various courts across Allegheny County. I've handled matters from civil to criminal to personal injury to landlord-tenant matters. And I will bring that breadth of knowledge to the court and also my experience locally, again, as a mayor, being boots on the ground, finger on the pulse, learning what doesn't work and what doesn't work. I've had a unique opportunity to contribute to my community, and I want to go from helping the 3,500 residents of Sharpsburg to helping the 30,000 residents of the school district as magistrate with all of the characteristics that I've developed over the course of my time as an attorney and as an elected official.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, same question.
To put a more finer point on it, the most important thing that a magisterial district judge can bring is relevant, practical experience. And that's exactly what I have. I haven't just been someone who's been talking the talk, but I've actually am someone who's been walking the walk for a number of years. If a district judge doesn't know the law, they don't know the rules of evidence, and they're going to feel their way through the dark on your particular case. And they're going to use you as a test case, and they're trying to get their feet on the ground. That doesn't do anybody a service. It doesn't do any of the parties. It doesn't do the overall system, the community a service. That person needs to know a good case from a bad case. They need to know whether the government has met their burden. They need to know whether a search warrant contains the requisite probable cause. They need to know, in terms of a civil issue, they need to know what evidence is there, whether it's good evidence, whether the parties are credible. You can't learn that. You can't put that to work in some other field and then expect to apply it here in this kind of race. That's just not, it's not believable.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, last on this question.
Sure, I think it might be a relevant time to raise the fact that you don't even need to be an attorney to run for this position. So with that said, we are all fortunate that we're attorneys. I think based on what I've seen, all competent, all able to comprehend the rules of evidence, which is certainly something I've focused a great deal of my professional career on as a civil litigator. What I would look for a magistrate position, if I were just a voter, is somebody who really is invested in the community, somebody who really seems to have great integrity and caring about the communities, and somebody who wants to be interested in, no matter who's before them, their ultimate benefit over the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question will start with Ms. Lynch and loop its way around. This is also from the form submission. What would be your top priority if elected as Magisterial District Judge?
Great, thank you. And again, I'm reminded about judges are not allowed to make commitments and promises, right? So I'm staying within the guidelines of the judicial code. But my top priority would be to really look into having the Citizens or Residents Academy. I don't think people are aware sometimes of the various issues, the rules, the regulations, the consequences. I know certainly the students in the district are not always aware of what the consequences of their actions would be. So I would really like to have a program where people can get to know the court, where the judge could be out again in the community, not necessarily adjudicating cases, but out there in the community, finding out again what are the current real issues that come before the people that they want to have more interaction on. Other than that, I'd like to encompass this whole entire discussion that we've had, as well as the other forums that we've had, and bring all of that into consideration so that we can serve effectively. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rudsky, same question.
Thank you. I think it's most important to just serve the needs of the community and to be accessible. As Jess points out, I think it would be important to introduce workshops to the magistrate's office. And workshops can be talking about fines and costs, can be helping people through the Clean Slate Act, or can be helping people with expungements. Magistrates do have a lot of tools available to them, and I think they have been historically underutilized. In past races, it's been about law and order, but I think criminal justice reform is the theme in this judicial race and across the county for the Court of Common Pleas. So it's about accessibility, it's about educating, and it's about opening the doors to the justice system. And that also requires magistrates to interact with the community and let folks know that they're there and that they will be available and that they will help them.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, same question.
Sure. As I alluded to earlier, expediting detainer cases, that's a huge issue. And that's somewhere where a magisterial district judge can make real progress. When all the parties agree, when someone is detained, they're on probation with a common pleas court judge, whether they have a new case that's a summary, whether it's a theft, a homicide, a robbery, it doesn't matter. That person is automatically detained and they're incarcerated. It doesn't matter if their bail is $1 or $1 million. And that can't be disposed of until they're in front of a common pleas court judge. Until their magistrate issue is either settled, held for court, and then they get a date later. But if a magistrate is only there 1 day a week, if they're only there, they're beholden to the old way of doing things, or they have something else going on in their life, they're too busy, they aren't making time, they can't be heard, and that person will sit in jail even longer. That's where a magistrate can make real impact. They can flag those cases. That's something I would want to do, and expedite them and make sure that those are heard in a timely manner when all parties are agreeing they're available. And I've built relationships in my employment. I'd be able to work with all the parties, the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, the office of conflict counsel, everybody that might be involved in order
Your
to—
time is up, Ms. Sasinoski.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, same question.
Could I ask a favor? Would you mind repeating the question? Sorry, this is the first time I've asked this in any of our forums. Do you still have it up?
Give me 1 second to scroll back. Sorry.
I can just talk for a minute if I need to.
1 second.
I'm so sorry.
Here we go. So what would be your main priority if you were to be elected as the magisterial district judge?
Okay, thank you. Sorry for making you go back. So again, my main priority is to work on the community side. We're all judges. I beg your pardon, we're all lawyers. I think we all have the same goals as judges inside the courtroom. What I'm really excited and think differentiates me is this process I have in mind for working with people, children, adult families who have had bad outcomes in the court, and personalizing the process with them. And that means inviting them into my office. Again, I've worked with people who are in the criminal justice system, and I work with them to help them. So I'm not afraid to have anybody come in my office who's been committed of a crime, and I'm not afraid to have anybody in my office who's been a victim, and to problem solve with them, to see if we can help them better their lives, and again, believe that the judicial system is there to help them and not hurt them. It's the personalization of the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. And last on this question, Mr. Wingard.
Thank you very much. What I would say the number one priority in the short term would be mental health court. I mean, we're seeing so many strange cases down in the common pleas court, down in front of Judge Lazaro, in front of Judge Ivashevic. These are cases that we would have never historically seen. These are people who have been in their house for a year. These are people that are seeing things and experiencing things. Mental health right now is different than it was when I started doing it. We're seeing so many situations that we need to get early intervention on. We need to get involved in these cases. We need to resolve these at the district magistrate level. There's no reason that elderly people with 0 prior record scores should be going downtown on cases that have an offense gravity score that's relatively small, retail theft, in the more serious cases as well, where people are hallucinating off their medications. Mental health court, we have to do it, and we have to do it early. I'm the only person that can bring that about. I'm the person that wants to make our—
Your time is up, Mr. Wingard.
Thank you. While there are so many topics that we wish we could have covered tonight, that is about all the time we have for the Q&A segment. So now each candidate will have 1 minute, 30 seconds to tell voters why they should choose them in the voting booth on Tuesday, May 18th. Candidates, this will be your final pitch to voters, and we'll be going in reverse alphabetical order this time. So we'll start with Mr. Wingard and go alphabetically backwards. So Mr. Wingard, you have 1 minute, 30 seconds to give us your final pitch why voters should choose you. You are still muted, Mr. Wingard.
I'd like to thank you for bringing this forum together. It's been very delightful. All of us have gotten to know each other much better than had we not had these forums, and especially this finale forum tonight. I'm the person who has the most experience. And I think, as we've said tonight, 30 years in the military, 15 Army, 15 Air Force, as a judge advocate general, as a war crimes prosecutor, as a defense attorney and a prosecutor, I've seen things from every different angle. As a public defender for 20 years and a criminal justice practitioner for 25 years, I'm the only person that can bring about mental health court, veterans court, and drug court into the magisterial district. And what I would say to you is that we don't want to be like other magisterial districts. We want to be a leader. We want to be a model. Currently, I teach mental health court and I teach veterans court and drug court to others that are coming into our offices, into adult probation, into JRS, in fact. The apparatus is actually already in place if we only had a magisterial district judge that knew the people, the places, the funding sources, and how to get people the help they need. Not everybody needs to go downtown, but when they do have to go downtown, we can at least flag those cases in such a way that the person who follows me after I win for district judge will be able to handle them once they get down into the common pleas courts in front of Judge Lazaro and in front of Judge Ivashevic. So I would like to thank you for taking this time, for allowing me to give my presentation, and hopefully on May the 18th, you'll go with experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, your final pitch.
Sure. I hope this doesn't fall afoul of the rules, but somebody wrote to me the other day who had connected with me over my campaign, and he said that he wasn't really intending to vote, but he read about me and saw my experience and saw that I gave a damn, is the way that he put it. And I do. I care very much about this community. I've lived here for a reason. I've been away only while I've been at Pitt as an undergraduate. I served every one of our neighborhoods. I've fought fires at the Cross Keys restaurant and the Aspinwall Presbyterian Church. I've pumped out basements in every community and open up cars that have been in collisions. And it's not just me, but all of the fire departments in our region. You should know they don't just serve the region they're in; they serve all the neighboring regions as well. And I've also served your kids and your grandkids as a teacher, and I've done that without regard to anything about them, their mental abilities, their backgrounds, their race. My concern as a teacher and frankly, as a lawyer, is the best interest of the person over a long period of time. And I was sort of mentioning it before, I'm an optimist. Teachers need to be, it's baked into us. So when I see failure, I might get frustrated for a day, but I will come back to the person that is having the failure again and again and again.
Your time is up, Mr. Turner.
And not give up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Sasinoski, your final pitch.
Thank you to everyone for hosting us, for all the other candidates for participating. This has been great. It's a great platform, and I'm running, and I hope to earn everybody's vote because I have the relevant experience and commitment necessary that we need to do this job. I mentioned earlier, I'm an assistant district attorney. My sole goal has always been to seek justice, and that's for not only victims in cases, but those charged with crimes and the overall community as a result. I've handled thousands of cases in front of almost every magisterial district judge in Allegheny County. I've reviewed hundreds of search warrants before they're even presented to magisterial district judges. I know how to do the job. I've walked the walk. I haven't just been talking about it for the last few years. If I wanted to do something else, if my experience lined up somewhere else, I'd be interviewing for a different job. And that's what this is. This is an interview where the interviewers are the voters. And that's everybody watching here today. I also have the commitment that this job needs. Judges matter, and they matter at every single level. There are people who diminish this job, and there are people who say that it's not that important. It doesn't take skill. It doesn't take any kind of special training. They're just nice people. And that's not true, because the decisions magisterial district judges make directly impact community members every single day, whether it's a traffic ticket for somebody who has a suspended license who has to care for an elderly relative or take a child to school. Try telling them that their suspended license isn't important. Those are kind of cases that I've handled. Those are the experiences I've had. Those are people I've tried to help, and on both sides of the issue. I have the real experience. I have the real commitment to do this job, and that's why I'm running. And that's why I hope to earn everybody's vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudsky, your final pitch.
Thank you again, Sarah, and to Jill, and to the library, and to all of the candidates here tonight. We've had a lot of fun on these forums over the last 10 or so days. But again, I will reiterate that magistrates are community-based judges. And as was alluded to earlier, magistrates are not required to be lawyers. And we are lucky that everyone here running is a lawyer. But I think the reason behind that by the General Assembly is they want people running to be magistrate who have that investment in their community and that commitment in their community. And it's a bonus that it could be a lawyer who's running for that office, someone who has practiced in multiple courts on a wide range of issues, a general practice attorney. And I will bring my experiences in all of the fields that I have practiced in, and my experiences being an elected official, being a public servant, being boots on the ground and finger on the pulse and learning what doesn't work, coupled with my training as a lawyer, and bring that to the magistrate's office to truly make it a people's court accessible to everyone. Magistrates are our gatekeepers, and they need to pay attention. They need to work with the community, and they need to find solutions that work for everybody. And that is my commitment to you. So I humbly ask for your vote and for your support, whether you're voting by mail or on Election Day on May 18th.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Lynch, your final pitch for voters.
Thanks very much. And my aim has always been to help people. And in that way, I'm a lot like librarians. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Jill, for helping us and helping the voters be informed about this election. Sometimes I've rolled up my sleeves and gone into the streets. Sometimes I've worked in boardrooms, and I've certainly worked a lot in courtrooms to help people solve their problems. And solving difficult problems is what the magisterial district judge does. Difficult doesn't always have to mean a very complex statutory case. Difficult means personal. And we know that these cases are personal. They're personal to our neighbors. They're personal to their liberty and their safety, and perhaps even to their pocketbooks. And based on my experience as a conflict resolution specialist, as an arbitrator who hears and decides cases presently through the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, I respectfully request your vote and to consider voting for me as your next Magisterial District Judge. I want to take a second and thank my family, Jay Arnone, and my daughters, Allison and Lindsay Arnone, for their support of this campaign. It has been an amazing experience with all of the candidates here, and I thank everybody for their civility through the process. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So I want to thank all of our candidates for participating this evening. Once again, the candidates for Magisterial District Judge are Jessica Lynch, Matthew Rudzki, Megan Sasinoski, David Turner, and Barry Wingard. They will be serving the Fox Chapel Area School District, including Aspinwall, Sharpsburg, Blawnox, Indiana Township, O'Hara Township, and Fox Chapel. I also want to thank my colleague, Jill McConnell, for being our timekeeper tonight. And finally, thank you to the residents of Sharpsburg and all other municipalities, whether you submitted a question or are watching tonight or at a later date. I also want to make viewers aware that the Pittsburgh chapter of the League of Women's Voters also hosted a virtual forum with these very same candidates last week, which is also available to view on YouTube. We will have a pre-recorded YouTube session with the Sharpsburg mayoral candidates this week on Thursday, and the video for Borough Council candidates is ready to view on YouTube as well. Remember to vote on May 18th, and good night and good luck to our candidates.
Thank you. Take care.